I used to work nights at a small roadside inn just outside a quiet town. It wasn't fancy, 2 floors, around 40 rooms, and the kind of outdated carpet that smelled faintly like coffee and rain. Nights were usually dead silent. That was what I liked about it. I'd work the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift, sit behind the counter, scroll on my phone, or check the cameras every now and then. Most guests checked in before midnight. After that, I rarely saw anyone until morning. That night started like any other, slow, uneventful, the hum of the vending machine filling the empty lobby. Around 11 p.m., I heard the buzz at the front door. We locked the doors automatically after 10, so I had to press the release to let people in. A man stepped inside. He looked mid-40s, tall but a bit frail, wearing a dark jacket and a faded baseball cap. He carried a single duffel bag and had this distant, blank stare, like he wasn't fully present. He asked for a room for the night. His voice was calm, almost too calm. I quoted the rate, and he nodded. He slid his card across the counter, and the machine beeped, approving the transaction. I handed him the key card for room 209. He held it for a few seconds without looking at it, just staring at me. Then he gave a small smile, thin and cold, and walked off toward the elevator. Something about him stayed in my head longer than it should have. Maybe it was his eyes. They didn't move the way most people's do, they just locked on. I shrugged it off, thinking I was tired. After all, you meet all sorts when you work nights. Around midnight, I glanced up from my phone and nearly jumped. The same man was back in the lobby, sitting on one of the couches across from the front desk. He wasn't watching TV. The screen was off. He was just sitting there, facing it, perfectly still. I assumed maybe he couldn't sleep, guests did that sometimes. But 30 minutes passed, and he didn't move. No phone. No book. Not even a blink that I could see. Something about the air in the lobby felt heavier, like the building was holding its breath. Then, as I walked to the vending machine to grab a bottle of water, I felt his eyes shift. He was watching me. Every step. Every movement. I told myself I was imagining it. But when I sat back behind the counter, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about him didn't belong here, like he wasn't really a guest at all. That's when I checked the computer, and saw that room 209 was still marked vacant. At first, I thought maybe the system had glitched. The computer at the desk was old, and sometimes it lagged or froze. But when I refreshed the reservations list, room 209 still showed vacant. I scrolled through the check-in logs, but his name wasn't there. No record. No charge. Nothing. My heart started racing. I knew I'd swiped his card, heard the little beep, saw the green light. I even handed him the key card myself. So how could there be no trace? I tried to rationalize it, maybe I'd entered something wrong. Maybe the card failed at the last second. I decided to call the room just to double-check. I typed in 209 and waited. It rang 10 times. No answer. That's when I checked the keycard log. Each room records when a key is used to open the door. It showed no entry. The door had never been unlocked that night. Which meant, he never went to the room at all. A cold wave crawled down my back. I slowly turned toward the lobby, and there he was, still sitting in the same spot. Motionless. Staring at that blank TV screen. The silence between us felt unnatural. Even the faint hum of the air conditioning seemed distant. I debated calling my manager, but part of me didn't want to sound paranoid. He hadn't done anything yet, he was just there. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. Around 1:30 a.m., I finally worked up the nerve to approach him. "Sir," I said softly, "is everything okay? Do you need anything?" He turned his head slowly, too slowly, and looked at me with eyes that didn't blink. His voice was low and flat when he finally said, "Couldn't sleep." Then he turned back to face the dark TV. I forced a polite smile and went back behind the counter. My hands were trembling. When I looked up again a few minutes later, the couch was empty. My heart skipped. I scanned the lobby, but he was gone. Then I spotted movement at the far end of the hallway near the bathrooms. He was standing there in the shadows, half hidden, watching me. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there, like a shape the darkness had decided to keep. That was when I finally picked up the phone and called my manager. She sounded half asleep but told me to stay calm and to call the police only if he acted threatening. I hung up and stared at the monitor. But the truth was, he already felt threatening. I checked the security cameras, and what I saw next made me realize he hadn't just been watching me, he'd been moving all around the hotel. The cameras were divided into 4 feeds, 1 for the lobby, 2 for the hallways, and 1 for the back entrance. When I switched to the first floor hallway view, I froze. The man was walking down the corridor, slowly, his hands in his jacket pockets. He stopped at the far end of the hall and just stood there, facing the wall. Minutes passed. Then he turned around and walked back toward the camera, toward the lobby. I kept watching, my stomach tightening. He wasn't a guest. He had no room. And yet, he was roaming freely through the building like he belonged here. I switched to the next camera feed. He was in the stairwell now, standing motionless on the first step, staring upward. He stayed there for almost 10 minutes. Every so often, his head tilted slightly, like he was listening for something. By 3 a.m., I couldn't sit still. I called the non-emergency police line and told them there was a man inside who wasn't registered. They said they'd send someone. While waiting, I checked the lobby feed again, and nearly dropped my phone. He was closer. He was standing halfway across the lobby, facing the desk. The expression on his face was unreadable, but his eyes, dark and hollow, were locked on mine through the glass window of my little office. He didn't blink. Didn't move. Just watched. The phone rang, making me flinch. Another guest buzzed at the door, returning late from somewhere. I pressed the button to let them in, trying to act normal, but the man's head turned sharply toward the sound. He followed the guests' movements across the lobby, watching them like a predator watching prey. That's when I realized, he wasn't just loitering. He was studying people. I grabbed the phone again and called 911 this time. The operator told me officers were already en route. I didn't move my eyes from the monitor as she spoke. I saw him now outside one of the occupied rooms on the first floor, standing inches from the door, motionless. It took every ounce of strength not to scream. Minutes later, the front door buzzer sounded again, and this time it really was the police. 2 officers walked in, and I pointed straight toward the lounge. He was sitting on the couch again, like nothing had happened. Calm. Quiet. The cops approached him, spoke briefly, and escorted him out without resistance. One officer came back and told me the truth, the man's credit card was stolen. He had no bags, no ID, no booking. He'd never been a guest. He'd just been inside the hotel for hours, pretending, so he could stay unseen. After they left, I sat alone behind the desk, watching the monitors until sunrise. Every time I blinked, I swore I'd see that same pale face in the corner of the frame, staring back. I still don't know what his plan was that night. But I know for certain, he wasn't just wandering. He was waiting. And for weeks afterward, when the night was quiet and the cameras flickered, I kept wondering. What if he finally found the hotel he was really looking for? My name's Elena, and I used to work the graveyard shift at a lonely gas station off Route 19, the kind of place people only notice when their tank's empty or their phone dies. It was small, half-lit, and always smelled faintly like burnt coffee and cleaning spray. I took the job because it was steady, quiet, and predictable. But lately, I've come to realize that quiet doesn't always mean safe. It started on a foggy Thursday night, just after 1 a.m. The wind outside had gone completely still, and the flickering light above pump 3 was the only thing moving. I was about to heat up a stale cinnamon roll when the door chimed. A man walked in, mid-40s maybe, tall, pale, wearing a green jacket with the collar pulled high. His hair was messy, and his eyes looked too alert for that hour. He didn't go for snacks or coffee like most people. He just stood near the counter, looking at me like he was trying to remember something about my face. "Evening," I said with the kind of fake cheer you develop from dealing with weird customers at 2 a.m. He smiled slightly. "You always work this late?" That made me pause. "Yeah, most nights." He nodded, still staring. "Thought so. I've passed through a few times. You're always here." Something about that sent a prickle down my neck. I tried to play it off. "Yeah, small town. Not a lot of staff rotation." He looked around the small store, then back at me. "Elena, right?" My blood ran cold. I wasn't wearing a name tag. I forced a confused smile. "Have we met?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he motioned toward the chalkboard behind me where I'd written, "Try our hot chocolate," earlier in my own handwriting. "You write your letters different," he said. "You use these little diagonal dots on your eyes instead of circles." I noticed details like that. He said it softly, almost like a compliment, but something about the way he said I noticed things made me feel trapped behind the counter. After a long pause, he finally said, "I'm Paul," then turned and walked back out into the fog. The bell above the door jingled, and then it was just me again, the hum of the freezer filling the silence. For the next few nights, I kept seeing the same green jacket. Sometimes parked in the corner of the lot. Sometimes just driving by slow, headlights dimmed. Never long enough to prove anything. But long enough for me to know, he was coming back. And one night, when I stepped outside for air, his car was already there, engine off, lights out, but I could see the faint glow of his cigarette burning in the dark. For a few days, nothing happened. I told myself maybe I was overreacting, that he was just a harmless drifter passing through. But that lie only worked until the following Wednesday night. It was around 12:45 a.m. The store was empty, the hum of the coolers echoing through the aisles. I was restocking the drinks fridge when I noticed headlights sweep across the far end of the lot, then turn off. I peered through the window and froze. The same green jacket. Same car. Parked near the dumpster where the shadows were thickest. He didn't come inside. He just sat there. I could see the faint outline of his face lit by his phone screen, unmoving, like he was waiting for something. Or someone. After 20 minutes of pretending not to notice, I finally locked the front door from the inside. My hands were shaking. A few minutes later, I stepped into the small back room and grabbed the metal tire iron I kept there, just in case. When I came back out, the car was gone. But the feeling wasn't. The next night, he showed up again. This time, he came inside. He walked slowly, his eyes scanning the shelves like he was memorizing them. Then he looked at me and smiled faintly. "You're quieter tonight," he said. "It's been a long shift," I muttered. He leaned on the counter. "Must get lonely. Just you out here, all by yourself, surrounded by miles of dark." I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles whitened. "I manage." His eyes didn't leave mine. "Do you ever get scared, Elena? Being a woman alone at night?" His voice wasn't aggressive, just curious. And that made it even worse. I swallowed. "Do you need to buy something, or?" He chuckled softly, looked around, then said, "You're smart to keep that back door locked. I notice you check it every night around 2. My heart skipped. There was no way he could know that, unless he'd been watching me. I didn't say anything. Didn't move. "I didn't mean to make you nervous," he added, smiling gently like it was all a misunderstanding. "Just, observant, I guess." Then he turned and walked out. No purchase. No goodbye. Just the sound of the door chime fading into the night. That night, I couldn't bring myself to go outside to take out the trash. Every corner of that parking lot felt alive, like eyes were in the dark watching me. I started walking to my car with my keys between my fingers, just like my mother used to tell me. I even moved the tire iron under the counter, where I could grab it fast if I needed to. But it didn't help. Because by then, I already knew, he wasn't watching me by accident. He was studying me. And when I found the Polaroid on the counter the next night, a photo of me taken from outside the station window, I realized he'd never really left. I still remember that moment like a snapshot burned into my brain. It was 2:05 a.m. when I came back from refilling the windshield washer tank outside. The fog was thick enough to swallow sound, and the station lights glowed like little islands in the dark. When I walked back behind the counter, there it was, a single Polaroid photo, face down beside the register. I turned it over. It was me. Taken from outside, through the window. My head was tilted slightly as I poured washer fluid. The photo was close, too close, like whoever took it was standing just a few feet away. There was no note, no handwriting. But someone had circled the tiny slashed dot above the I in the word windshield printed on the jug, in red ink. I dropped the photo, my stomach turning to stone. I locked both doors immediately and checked the cameras. Nothing. The parking lot was empty, but that meant nothing. I'd learned he knew where the blind spots were. At 2:30, headlights flashed briefly across the pumps and then went dark. The same car. Same jacket behind the wheel. I grabbed the phone and called the police. The dispatcher said they'd send a patrol car, but the nearest one was 20 minutes away. 20 minutes can be a lifetime. He got out of the car. The glass door rattled as he pushed against it, realizing it was locked. Then he just stood there, staring at me through the window, his face calm, almost gentle, like this was just another ordinary visit. I lifted the phone again, still talking to dispatch. My voice was trembling so badly I could barely form words. Paul's hand came up slowly and pressed against the glass, palm flat, his breath fogging a small circle near his face. "You don't have to be scared," he mouthed. I backed away from the counter, clutching the tire iron so tightly my hand ached. The hum of the coolers was the only sound. Then, suddenly, his smile disappeared. He looked toward the road, then back at me, and got into his car. Red and blue lights appeared moments later. 2 officers pulled up as Paul drove off into the dark. They searched for him but didn't find a trace. When they took my statement, one of them mentioned the photo had fingerprints all over it, but not mine. The restraining order came through a week later. I quit that job, moved 2 towns over, and switched to day shifts. But sometimes, when I drive home and see headlights behind me for too long, my stomach tightens. Because I know he's still out there somewhere. Watching someone new. Noticing things. And every time I see a car idling too long in the dark, I can't help but wonder, has he finally found another night clerk to talk to? My name's Amber, and I've been working the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station just outside a small Midwestern town. I'm 23 and took this job because it was easy money, quiet hours, decent pay, and not much human contact. Usually, the nights are dull enough to make you talk to yourself just to fill the silence. But last weekend, things got very far from dull. It started around 2:30 a.m. Friday night. My co-worker from the weekday shift, Mason, stopped by with his friend Derek to grab coffee and hang out for a few minutes. They were both giggling and red-eyed, apparently, they'd taken some mushrooms earlier. I didn't mind. They were harmless and, honestly, their stupid jokes made the long shift a little easier. While we were talking, Derek leaned on the counter and said, "Hey, you know there's a car running out there, right?" I frowned. "Running?" He nodded toward the parking lot. "Yeah. It's been there since before we pulled in. Lights off. Guy inside. Says he's waiting for a food delivery. That wasn't unusual. DoorDash drivers often idled outside while waiting for orders. But my tablet hadn't pinged for nearly 2 hours, and no delivery orders were pending. I shrugged. Maybe he's just lost. We went back to chatting. Mason and Derek went outside to smoke with Mason's dog, a hyper little husky who loved barking at shadows. I stayed inside, counting bills from the register, glancing up at the cameras now and then. 15 minutes later, they came back in for more coffee, and Mason looked uneasy now. "Hey, that dude's still out there," he said quietly. "He keeps staring at us. And his car doesn't have plates. Not front or back." I stopped mid-sip. "No plates?" He nodded. "Brand new SUV. Blank spot where the plate should be. He's been on his phone the whole time, keeps looking toward the store like he's texting someone about us." Derek chuckled nervously. I went up and asked him what his deal was. First, he acted like he didn't understand English. Then he said, "Wrong address," and just sat back. That's when Mason added, right after that, another car pulled in, also brand new. No plates either. As soon as the first one left, the second followed. For the first time all night, I felt genuinely cold despite the heater running. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked when I said, "Probably just weird coincidence." They stayed another 15 minutes before heading home, leaving me alone again in that humming fluorescent quiet. But from that moment on, every time headlights flickered outside, I couldn't help wondering if one of those cars had come back, waiting for me to be alone. And when I glanced at the camera feed around 4 a.m., I realized I wasn't wondering anymore, because the same car was back, engine running, lights off. I told myself not to panic. Maybe it was someone using the Wi-Fi, or maybe a driver taking a nap before sunrise. That's what I kept repeating as I watched the security feed, the grainy black and white image of the same dark SUV sitting at the edge of the parking lot, headlights off but engine clearly humming. A faint heat shimmer flickered behind the exhaust pipe. I couldn't see the driver's face, just the shape of a head illuminated by the glow of a phone screen. Every few seconds the light blinked out, then came back on, like he was typing short messages. I dialed Mason. He answered groggily. "Hey, that car's back," I whispered. "The one with no plates?" "Yeah. Same spot." He sighed. "You want me to come over?" "No, I'm fine," I lied. "Just thought you should know." The next half hour dragged. A couple of truckers stopped for gas, and I relaxed a little while they were there. But the moment their taillights vanished, the emptiness came roaring back. I couldn't stop glancing toward the glass doors, half expecting the handle to jiggle. Around 3:15, 4 guys came in, a group of construction workers heading home from a night shift. Loud, laughing, smelling of diesel. Their presence filled the store with life again. As I rang them up, one of them turned toward the window and said, "Hey, you aware there's a car running out there? Kinda sketchy." The words hit me like ice water. I asked what kind of car. "Black SUV," he said. "No plates. Looks brand new. 2 guys inside arguing or something." My mouth went dry. I told him quietly, "That same car's been here before." He frowned. "Really?" "Because it looked like they were pointing toward the store just now." I froze. The men offered to wait around for a bit, said they'd top off their coffee while keeping watch. For 20 minutes they lingered, joking loudly to fill the silence, but their eyes kept darting toward the parking lot. Then one of them muttered, "They're gone." Sure enough, when I checked the window, the space was empty, again. The men left soon after. I thanked them and locked the doors the second they pulled away. But the relief didn't last. Because when I rewound the camera feed, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The second car, the smaller sedan that had followed the SUV before, had pulled in behind the store for a few seconds before both disappeared down the highway. Coincidence didn't feel like an option anymore. The rest of my shift passed in a haze of caffeine and half-breath panic. By the time the sky started to pale, I could still hear that faint hum in my ears, the sound of an engine idling somewhere just out of sight. And when I came back the next night, the first thing I saw was fresh tire marks across the back lot, leading straight toward the dumpster, where the cameras couldn't see. By the time I clocked in the next night, the air already felt wrong, heavier somehow, as if the building itself knew what was coming. The tire tracks were still there, curling through the frost-dusted gravel like a signature left behind on purpose. I tried to shake it off and focused on cleaning the coffee station. Around 3 a.m., the world was quiet enough that I could hear the hum of the refrigerators, the click of the overhead lights, and the faint whistle of wind slipping through the front door's rubber seal. That silence had started to feel like a trap. Then, a truck pulled in, a group of night shift workers again. 4 of them, laughing, grabbing snacks and drinks. I almost felt grateful they'd shown up. People meant safety. Noise meant life. As I was ringing them up, one of them, a bearded guy in a reflective jacket, leaned close and said, "You know you've got 2 cars sitting out there, right?" The words hit me like a jolt of static. 2. He nodded. 1 in the front lot, 1 parked on the far end near the dumpster. Both with engines running. No plates. My mouth went dry. The others turned to look through the windows, squinting into the dark. I forced a shaky smile. Probably delivery drivers. The bearded man frowned. Then why'd they turn their headlights off the second we pulled in? That was enough for me. I told them about the last 2 nights, the missing plates, the people watching, the strange behavior. Their laughter faded, replaced by the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. One of them said, "We'll hang around for a bit, make sure you're good." For 15 minutes, they lingered, standing outside their truck, pretending to smoke but clearly keeping watch. I stayed behind the counter, my heart hammering. Then one of them called out, "They're leaving." Both engines roared to life, and the 2 cars pulled out almost in sync, disappearing into the road like shadows melting into fog. We all exhaled at once. The men came back inside, joked nervously, and eventually drove off. I stayed locked in for the rest of my shift, watching the monitors like they were lifelines. Nothing else happened that night. But just before dawn, when I went outside to empty the trash cans, I noticed something wedged under the lid of the far bin, a folded receipt. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was blank except for 1 line scribbled in red ink. "You're lucky they showed up again." I dropped it and backed away, scanning the lot. Empty. Silent. But I knew then, those cars hadn't been waiting for gas. They'd been waiting for me. And now, every time I see headlights stop at the far edge of the lot, I can't help but wonder, what would have happened if no one had shown up that night? My name's Daniel, and for 3 years I worked the overnight shift at a small roadside lodge about an hour outside the city. It was a family-run place, 2 floors, maybe 25 rooms total, the kind of cheap stopover where people stayed 1 night and never remembered the name afterward. I worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights were peaceful, if not boring. The front office had a little desk, a few couches, a rack of travel brochures, and a coffee pot that never stopped brewing. Behind it, there was a small back room with a couch and a monitor that showed all the security cameras. When no one was around, I usually sat back there watching videos or half dozing until a guest arrived. The rhythm of the building never changed much. The heater clicked every hour, the fridge hummed, the floorboards creaked in the same spots every night. But the problem with working alone that long is you start noticing the small things too, the things that don't belong. It happened on a Tuesday around 2 a.m. The parking lot was empty except for 4 cars. I was halfway through a cup of instant noodles when I heard the front desk bell ding. I froze. The bell only rang when someone pressed it. I got up, walked out to the lobby, and found no one there. The doors were closed. The air was still. Not even a car driving by on the road. I stood for a minute, waiting, then checked outside. Nothing. The cold air hit me like glass. The night was so quiet that even the crickets sounded distant. I went back inside, locked the door, and tried to laugh it off. Maybe I imagined it. 10 minutes later, it rang again. This time I jumped out of the chair and ran to the counter, still no one. My pulse pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I checked under the counter, behind the couch, even the front bathroom. Empty. I sat down behind the desk and stared at the bell. Its little silver top reflected the dim lobby light. I waited, 5 minutes, 10, 20. Nothing. Just as I was beginning to relax, a soft ding echoed again. I saw the bell move. A pale hand, thin and trembling, slid up from under the counter, pressed it once more, and then disappeared beneath the desk. For a full second, I couldn't breathe. The chair rolled back as I bolted into the back office, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands shook as I stared at the security monitors, praying the feed was just a glitch. But what I saw made my stomach drop, because there really was someone under that desk. And when the figure finally crawled out on hands and knees, I realized he wasn't just hiding, he'd been waiting for me the entire time. My breath came in short, shaky bursts as I stared at the monitor. The grainy black and white feed showed the front desk exactly how I'd left it, one overturned chair, my notebook on the floor, the bell glinting faintly under the fluorescent light. Then, at the bottom of the frame, a head appeared. It rose slowly, just enough for the camera to catch the outline of a face, pale, expressionless, eyes reflecting like dull marbles. Whoever it was, they were staring directly into the lens. I stumbled back from the monitor, nearly knocking over a stack of papers. My mind raced. How did he get in? The front doors were locked, and guests needed a key card to enter. The man began to crawl out from behind the counter, movements jerky but deliberate. He stood up halfway, hunched, and turned toward the lobby entrance as if listening. Then he straightened to full height and started pacing slowly around the room, dragging his hand along the wall, head tilted. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, whispering so quietly my voice barely came out. "There's someone in the motel," I said. "He's inside the lobby. Please." The dispatcher told me to stay calm, stay where I was, and lock any doors between me and the intruder. I'd already done that. The only thing between us now was a thin wooden door and maybe 20 feet of hallway. On the monitor, the man moved out of frame. My stomach dropped. A second later, I heard it, the faint creak of a floorboard from the hallway outside. Then another. Then the doorknob rattled, slow and deliberate, like someone testing it. I froze, every muscle locked tight. The knob turned again. A single metallic click. Then silence. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone, "Sir, are you safe?" I couldn't even answer. My eyes were glued to the door, watching the shadow move underneath the crack, long, thin, and still. For a few seconds, there was nothing but the sound of my own breathing. Then, finally, the shadow pulled back. The footsteps retreated, slow, measured, fading down the hall. I forced myself to look at the monitor again. The man was back in the lobby now, standing by the front doors, motionless. The light above him flickered. He reached up, touched the bell again, ding, and turned to face the glass doors as if he were waiting for someone else to arrive. I prayed the cops would show up soon. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew something wasn't right. The front doors were still locked. No alarm had gone off. So how did he get in at all? And when I switched cameras one last time, I saw the answer. The back entrance door was wide open, swinging gently in the cold wind. Cold air drifted in from the back hallway, carrying that faint metallic smell that comes before a storm. I stayed on the phone with dispatch, whispering updates I wasn't even sure were real anymore. The cameras flickered once, twice, and then stabilized. The man was still in the lobby, facing the doors now, rocking slightly on his heels like he was waiting for something just outside. The dispatcher said officers were minutes away. Those minutes felt endless. The man started walking again, slow, deliberate steps circling the lobby. Once, he stopped in front of the front desk and bent down, disappearing from view. I leaned forward, squinting at the screen. He was crouching, exactly where I'd first seen that hand appear. Then he looked up. Straight into the camera again. His lips moved, but the feed had no sound. He mouthed something short. 3 words, maybe 4. I couldn't make them out. I took a step back from the monitor just as the distant whoop of sirens broke through the night. Blue and red lights flared across the camera feeds. The man's head turned sharply. For a second, he just stood there, frozen, and then bolted out of frame. I heard the front doors open, followed by muffled voices, the police shouting commands, the scuffle of boots on tile. When the noise died down, someone knocked on the back office door. "It's the police, you're safe now," a voice called. I opened the door to 2 uniformed officers. One of them asked where the intruder went. I pointed toward the monitor, but the lobby feed was empty again. They swept the entire building. Every room. Every hallway. Even the maintenance closet. Nothing. He was gone, as if he'd vanished into the walls. At the front entrance, one of the officers noticed something strange, a heavy brick wedged under the door. He probably used this to keep it from locking, the taller cop said. Must have slipped out when we pulled up. They took my statement and promised extra patrols through the week. As they left, the lodge went quiet again, too quiet. I sat back down behind the desk, staring at the silver bell. My reflection warped in its curved surface. I reached out, almost without realizing, and pressed it lightly. Ding! The sound echoed through the lobby like a whisper. And then, faint but unmistakable, a single answering ding came from somewhere behind the wall. I froze, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No breathing. Just silence. Still, I didn't move for the rest of the night. When morning finally came, I replayed the footage one last time. On the last frame before the camera cut out, I saw him, crawling back under the desk. As if that was where he belonged. And sometimes, when I work late and the building goes quiet, I swear I still hear that soft metallic ring, as though he's still under there, waiting for the next night clerk to look away.